weather, I might have the blues, but nothing ever stopped me from dusting off my shoes. You might think you'll see me.
Hi, and welcome to Rental with Tim. I'm Tim. Thanks for being here. I always appreciate the time that you and I get to spend together, so thanks for tuning in. And I hope wherever you are that you're happy, healthy, and staying safe. On today's video, I'm going to be comparing my personal favorite for 2021. It's a lightweight daily trainer, the New Balance Rebel V2. I'm going to put it up against the newly released Nike ZoomX Streakfly.
But I threw up my umbrella when rain stops hitting down. Yeah! On a bad day, on a good day.
Now both of these are lightweight. There's a lot of cushion in the midsole, a lot of pop as you roll through your gait cycle. I think they're perfect for speed workout days or to race a 5K or 10K. So how do you know which one to buy? Well, that's a question that we're going to try to answer today, so be sure to stick around. But before I get into it too far, I always like to demonstrate what it looks like to run in the shoes I'm about to review for you. So let's do that, but then when we come back together, we're going to try to answer that all-important question, which shoe is right for you?
Left at the mall 'cause your mama forgot. I know it hurts. Bullied by the cool kids on the first day of school. I know it hurts so bad. Let it go, let it go. You'll be better off without our breaks. We don't care if you know we will never let you go. Can't take any more, I'm under control. We won't fight all the time, we'll punch you if you're feeling fine. Yeah, you will go on as long as you want.
Now, if you're new to the channel, welcome to the Run Tall family. Now, I post running shoe reviews, comparisons, and shoe battles weekly, but I also like to post other videos related to running as well. So if you enjoy watching running shoe reviews and other videos about running, be sure to subscribe to the channel and don't forget to click the notification bell so you'll be notified each time that I upload new content. Now, this video is not intended to be a full review of either shoe, but if you want to check that out, I'll put a link in the description below to reviews that I completed for each one previously. Now, both of these are considered to be neutral road shoes. I did order them true to size, and for me, that's a US men's size 9. There's a little bit of difference in weight. Now, the Nike ZoomX Streakfly is the lighter of the two options, and on my scales, they came in at 5.8 ounces, while the New Balance Rebel V2 came in at 7.2 ounces. Both still lightweight, but clearly the Nike ZoomX Streakfly is the lighter of the two shoes. There's also a difference in the cost. Now, the Rebel V2 cost $130 US, while the Nike ZoomX Streakfly cost $160 US. Let's start and talk about the midsole first, beginning with the Rebel V2. Here they have 30 millimeter stack height in the heel and 24 millimeters up in the forefoot, so they have a 6 millimeter offset. It's all fuel cell foam. According to New Balance, it's their most cushioned, most responsive midsole foam to date, and I absolutely believe that. It is super soft to run in. It has that wow factor. It's just a real pleasure to pick up, and it was my favorite shoe for 2021 for a daily trainer. The one thing I will note is that if you're a heel striker, it may not feel the best underfoot for you, and here's why. Because I feel like my heel is offset some, so it's setting more on the inside or the medial side of the shoe. So I feel like I'm already kind of leaning into it. And for someone like me who overpronates, if I was heel striking, there's no way that I would have any kind of fun or enjoyment running in the shoe, because it tends to promote an inward roll, as opposed to, helping kind of correct that. Now, again, it's a neutral shoe, so you don't expect there to be any kind of pronation control, but this seems to be in kind of that opposite direction of almost promoting that inward roll if I were striking on a heel. Now, I've been working to change my the way that my foot strike is over the last few years, and I was a heel striker for a lot of years, and I've moved now to really being a solid midfoot striker. I've been recently trying to move from my midfoot more up towards my forefoot of the shoe. But for me, these are really enjoyable as long as I'm landing on that midfoot. If I were landing back in the heel, I don't think it would be quite so much fun to run in. So now let's look at the Nike Streakfly. Here they've got 32 millimeter stack height in the heel and 26 millimeters up in the forefoot. So it still has a 6 millimeter offset, the same as what you find in the Rebel V2. And the ZoomX foam has a really remarkable feeling to it underfoot as what you find with the fuel cell foam in the Rebel V2. There's two big differences for me. The first is with the ZoomX. Here they've got a carbon fiber shank that's in the embedded within the foam up in the midfoot. Now that gives you a lot more pop. So it's really pretty similar to their Nike Next Percent. Not as aggressive, but you still have that same type of pop off the toe. And I really enjoy that because it helps you move through your gait cycle just a little bit faster, especially when you're up on that mid to forefoot of the shoe. The other major difference for me is I feel like my heel is setting more squarely over the midsole foam, so I don't get that promoting of the inward roll feeling that I get in the Rebel V2. So for me, these are a much more enjoyable, all around, maybe more versatile shoe to run in. But the one downside, I think, is going to be just how durable the ZoomX foam is. So while it has the same or similar feeling to run in, I'm just not sure it's going to last quite as long as the fuel cell foam is in the Rebel V2. So one possible option might be, if you can afford to have both shoes, is to run in the Rebel V2 for most of your daily training work, and then to have the Streakfly for that 5K race or 10K race that you might be training for, because it is clearly for me a faster shoe with a lot more pop and energy return than what's in the Rebel V2. It's just the durability that comes into question for me. So I prefer the Nike Streakfly to run in because it has that same wow factor, just maybe a little bit more of it than what you find in the Rebel V2, and it's a little bit more stable in the heel than Rebel V2 is. So let's take a look at the upper on both of these, starting with the Rebel V2 first. Now, both have an engineered mesh upper that's lightweight and highly breathable. I would say with the Rebel V2, there's a little bit more structure, and you can see that up around in the toe box. And of course, I have a lot more miles on these than I do in the Streakfly. I probably have 200 miles or so in the Rebel V2 and about 50 miles in the Streakfly, but still you can see that there's just a little bit more structure going on around in the toe box. The Rebel V2 does have a little bit more to the upper than the Streakfly. The Streakfly is a bit more of a minimalistic upper. They do have their New Balance logo that's scrawled across the midfoot section of the shoe, but not a whole lot else going on there. Now with the Streakfly, as I mentioned, it is a bit more minimalistic. They do have a little bit going on in the toe box, but it's really more of a plastic overlay than anything else. It gives it a little bit of durability, a little bit of structure, just not as much as what we just saw in the Rebel V2. They do have their Nike logo that's kind of scrawled across the entire shoe from the toe box around through to the midfoot section of the shoe back to the heel. Other than that, really not a whole lot going on. It is super lightweight, highly breathable. I could feel the air flowing right through this upper. So these are going to be really enjoyable on hot days. And it also makes them a little bit more lightweight. Remember, these came in at 5.8 ounces on my scales compared to 7.2 ounces for the Rebel V2. So let's take a look at the eyelet chain, starting with Rebel V2 first. Here you can see that they have an offset eyelet chain. Now they have 4 eyelets on one side and 5 on the other side. They also have this metal rivet up here as well that for me, it doesn't seem to serve any other purpose than maybe aesthetics. I felt it's locked in and secure across the midfoot section of the shoe at all times. I never had any issue getting that locked in, secure feeling, even though it doesn't have that extra eyelet to run with a runner's knot, or often what they call that heel lock knot. I didn't feel like I really needed it because my heel felt locked in and secure. Also, as long as we're talking about fit across the midfoot section, I had plenty of room up in the toe box to be able to splay my toes, even though you can see it has a pretty aggressive curvature on the lateral side of the shoe. So let's take a look at the ZoomX Streakfly. And here you can see that they too have an offset eyelet chain. Although it's not a traditional eyelet system, they use a corded system. The only time that really became an issue for me is when I was trying to cinch up across the midfoot section, which I was able to do and get locked in and secure across that midfoot, which is the most important aspect. But when I wasn't using a runner's knot, and they do include that extra eyelet in case you want to do that, when I wasn't using it, the corded system seemed to allow that tension to release before I had a chance to really tie the knot that I was trying to do. But when I was using the runner's knot, that seemed to hold the tension in place. So I found it easier simply to run with a runner's knot for that very purpose or that very reason. Now up in the toe box, I do feel like I have plenty of room to be able to splay my toes, although it seems to be a bit wider than maybe some of the other Nike shoes that I own. It does feel like it's a little bit less width up in the toe box than what I found in the Rebel V2, even though the appearance is that this is a more gentle curve on the lateral side of the shoe. I still feel like these are a little bit more narrow than the Rebel V2 is. So let's take a look at the tongue, starting with the Rebel V2. Now here you can see that it's not gusseted. It's very thin. There's no additional padding. Now I didn't have any issues with it migrating around, but I did run my laces through that extra loop up here that I think helps hold it in place. And I didn't feel like the laces were cutting across the top of my foot, but these laces are pretty thick and well padded, and I think that plays a pretty big role. Now with the Nike Streakfly, here they have an integrated tongue. There is some padding up towards the top, and I appreciate that because I think with these thinner laces, that might have been an issue, but because they have the padding there, they felt really comfortable. And because the tongue is integrated, even though it's thin, I didn't have any issues with it migrating around. It still laid flat across my foot. It's not going anywhere. It is very comfortable, and I think they did a good job with it. So let's take a look at the padding around the heel collar and the tab, starting with the Rebel V2 first. Here you can see that they have a fair amount of padding, especially for such a lightweight shoe, much more than what you're going to find here in the Streakfly. But I found it to be really comfortable. There is a pretty well-defined heel pocket for your heel to set in, and the padding, now it extends down quite a ways into the shoe, almost down to the footbed. So it is super comfortable. And as long as I got it up, let's put it on my shoulder. I'm going to give it the pinch test so we can look at how much structure is back in the heel counter. And as I pinch it together, you can see that, there's a little bit of structure there. Not a ton, but I think plenty for the shoe that, for what it's intended to be. And that's a lightweight daily trainer. It's just enough to help hold your heel in place, and I didn't have any heel slippage either up or down or side to side in the Rebel V2. So now looking at the Streakfly, here if we look at the padding, not nearly the same type of padding. Now here this is what I often call the bumper style. So it doesn't really extend all the way down to the footbed, but it's more like a pool table, or the bumpers on a pool table would be, but still very comfortable, and it created a nice heel pocket for my heel to set in. So I enjoy it. It feels really comfortable to run in. I didn't have any comfort issues at all with the amount of padding that they have there. I think they got it just about right, especially for what the shoe is intended for, and that's to pick up on race day for a 5K or 10K race. If you have the wherewithal and you want to use this as a daily trainer to do your speed work in, it might not last as long as the Rebel V2, but the comfort is there. I didn't have any issues with that, and I have been using it for that purpose to do all of my speed work in. So we'll see how the midsole holds up. So I'm getting a little bit off track, but let's go ahead and put this up on my shoulder, and we'll give it the pinch test in the heel. And you know what? There might be just a tad more structure in the heel counter on the Streakfly than there is in the Rebel V2. Maybe it's just because it's newer, but I would say that it's at least the same, maybe just a touch bit more. And I didn't have any issues with my heel slipping in either shoe, so it felt comfortable, and I think both companies did a good job with that. So let's flip these over and we'll take a look at the outsole, beginning with the New Balance Rebel V2 first. Here you can see that they have their endurance rubber, basically from the heel all the way through to your toe off. They do have some exposed fuel cell foam right here in the midfoot section of the shoe, but not a lot. So lots there to cover and to protect all that fuel cell foam that you have underfoot in the midsole. The one thing that is worth noting too, since I have this turned over and we're looking at the bottom of the shoe, it does narrow up a little bit there in the midfoot section, but it stays about that same width all the way through to the heel, and then they have a rounded heel bevel in the back. So let's put that aside and we'll take a look at the Nike Streakfly and see how they're doing. And not nearly as much rubber, but they've got it in pretty much the places where they need it, up it from the midfoot all the way through to your toe off. Then they have a little extra down here around in the heel, but there's quite a bit of exposed ZoomX foam in the midfoot section. And a slight difference here where it does narrow up quite a bit there in the midfoot section, a little more than what's in the Rebel V2 across here, which I think also accounts for being a little bit more snug across the midfoot. But then it widens out just a little bit in the heel area. Now, the terms of the width of the heel on both of these, I think they're pretty comparable. This looks a little more narrow in the heel, but I think that's only because it comes to a point rather than being rounded. Because if it wasn't for that point there, I think that the width would look almost the same. It's just this is more consistently wide from the midfoot all the way through to the heel, where this narrows up in the midfoot section. Now, for me, I prefer the Nike Streakfly overall. It is a little bit more money. It costs $30 US more, so it's a little bit more expensive, but it's quite a bit lighter, and it feels faster to me. Now, the only question that I have is the durability. I'm not sure how long that ZoomX foam is going to last underfoot. I suspect I'm only going to get about maybe 200 miles, 250 miles, similar to what you might get in the Nike Next% 2. So for overall value for your money, the Rebel V2 might be the better budget-friendly shoe that's going to give you a very similar feeling for the most part overall in terms of the amount of cushioning that's underfoot. But if you're looking for, in my opinion, the best shoe that's going to be the fastest, that's the Streakfly. I get more pop off my toe. I do feel a little bit more centered in the heel, and that feels more comfortable to me. So I don't feel like I'm on the medial side of the heel in the shoe like I do in the Rebel V2. Hey, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I enjoyed making it for you. As always, run tall, run strong, be kind to one another. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on Run Tall.
Left at the mall 'cause your mama forgot. I know it hurts.